Step into your greatness, let it shine oh so bright. I am worthy VIP, gonna take you to new heights. Turn the volume up, let's ignite your soul's delight. Join the journey now, everything gonna be alright. Hey, hey, you know you're worthy all day.
Hey there, you brilliant listener. Ever find yourself wondering what makes you tick, why you feel the way you do?
Yeah, it's a universal question, isn't it?
Totally. And today, we're going on a real inner adventure. We're diving deep into an idea that could truly change how you see your own experiences and maybe even lighten your load a bit.
We're exploring this really compelling perspective that our deepest emotional and psychological struggles don't actually originate from the outside world as much as they do from within.
From inside.
Yeah, from the very act of our own thinking.
Exactly. And to help us navigate this fascinating terrain, we've got some incredible insights pulled from Joseph Nguyen's audiobook, Don't Believe Everything You Think. You can find it on YouTube, also in written form.
It's got some powerful ideas in there.
It really does. So our mission on this deep dive is to get a solid handle on this core concept, that our thinking is the main driver of our suffering.
Right. And we'll look at the, crucial difference between just having thoughts and actively thinking about them.
Yes. And most importantly, discover practical ways to unlock more peace and kind of dial down that internal resistance we all know too well.
Mm-hmm. Before we really get into the weeds, though, maybe just take a moment. You, listening right now, bring to mind a time you felt pure, unadulterated joy, or just an overwhelming sense of love.
Yeah, just hold that feeling.
Let that feeling sit with you for a second. We'll be circling back to this powerful memory later on.
Okay, so let's get right into this idea that suffering might actually be optional. Our source material digs into a really insightful Buddhist concept here, the two arrows. Can you break that down for us?
Certainly. Imagine the first arrow as the initial sting of life. A painful event, an unexpected setback, maybe a harsh word someone says.
The stuff that just happens. Life stuff.
Exactly. It's the stuff that just happens.
Mm-hmm.
The Buddha suggested that this first arrow, this initial discomfort, is often just, an unavoidable part of being human.
Right. The curveballs life throws. Makes sense. But then there's a second one.
Precisely. And this is key. The second arrow is our reaction to that first one. It's the emotional turmoil that follows the stories we start telling ourselves about what happened, the judgments we make, the anxieties we build up around it.
Okay.
This second arrow, according to Buddhist wisdom, and echoed really powerfully in our source material, is the suffering we inflict upon ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's this one that's actually optional.
When I first heard this, I remember thinking, optional? Really?
Yeah.
Easy for you to say.
Especially when you're right in the thick of something really difficult. It feels like suffering is just part of the package.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very understandable reaction. It can sound almost too simple, maybe even a bit dismissive of real pain if you take it the wrong way.
Yeah.
But the key lies in understanding what ignites that second arrow, that whole layer of emotional suffering. If we can really grasp its source, then we might indeed find ways to make it optional.
And that leads us straight to the central point of our source material, the fundamental cause. It's not that initial hit, the first arrow, it's our own thinking. The book makes a very direct and, I think, compelling case that the primary driver of our psychological suffering is the way we think about and respond to the events in our lives.
Now, it's super important to be clear on this, isn't it? Because Joseph Nguyen isn't saying that pain or those tough situations aren't real or don't matter.
Absolutely not. That's crucial. The source material fully acknowledges that our experience of reality is genuine. Our feelings are real. No one's suggesting we just, pretend bad things don't happen or try to ignore genuine hardship.
Right.
However, what the book proposes is that our interpretation of those events, the meaning we assign to them, the worries we cook up, all of that stuff springs from our thoughts. And that's where the suffering takes hold.
The book talks about living in a world of thought, not reality. That's a pretty striking phrase. How does our thinking construct this separate world?
Well, think of an event unfolding. At its core, it's just an event. Neutral, in a way. But almost instantly, our minds jump in, sifting it through our past experiences, our ingrained beliefs about ourselves and the world, our fears about what might happen next. We layer all these interpretations and judgments onto the raw event.
Like adding filters.
Exactly like adding filters. And it's this internal narrative, this world of thought, that shapes our emotional experience far more profoundly than the original event itself often does.
Okay, I can see that. So if our thinking creates our feelings, then the really empowering takeaway is.
Exactly. If we recognize that connection, that direct link, then it logically follows that we have the potential to shift our feelings by shifting our thinking.
We have some agency there.
We do. And if we can transform our inner landscape, then our entire experience of life can be different. The book even suggests we're ever only one thought away from experiencing something different.
That's a really hopeful message. Wow. To really illustrate this, the source material shares a fantastic old Zen story, the one about the young monk and the empty boat. It's such a vivid example. Can you tell us about it?
Oh, it's a classic, and for good reason. It's timeless. So there's this young Zen monk, and he's finding it impossible to meditate peacefully at the monastery.
Too much going on.
Just too many distractions, other monks moving around, the sounds of animals, even the wind and the birds, He becomes increasingly frustrated, and his irritation just grows and grows.
Been there.
Right? So he decides to seek out a more tranquil spot by the lake. But even there, the natural sounds keep disturbing his focus. He's getting really worked up.
So in his search for quiet, he comes up with this brilliant plan.
He sees a small boat, and he thinks, perfect. The middle of the lake will surely be free from all disturbances.
Makes sense.
So he rows out, finally finds the silence he's been craving, and settles into a peaceful meditation for a couple of days. He's feeling like he's finally cracked the code to inner peace, finally got it figured out.
Until, of course, life has other plans. Always does.
Always does. On the third day, as he's deep in meditation, he hears splashing and feels his boat being rocked. Instantly, he's annoyed, right? Thinking someone or something is daring to disrupt his hard-won peace even out here.
How dare they?
Exactly. He opens his eyes and sees another boat heading directly towards him. He starts yelling, "Hey, watch out, steer clear." But the other boat just keeps coming and crashes right into his. Now he's absolutely furious.
Oh, I bet. Ready to give this unwelcome visitor a piece of his mind?
Absolutely. He stands up, ready to confront the person who dared to invade his sanctuary.
Yeah.
And then he sees that the other boat is completely empty.
Empty.
Totally empty. It has simply drifted across the lake and bumped into his. No one's steering it.
Wow. And in that moment, what happens to his anger?
It just vanishes. Poof. There was no one to direct it at. It was just an empty vessel. And in that instant, the young monk has this profound realization. He remembers his teacher asking him before, what was really making him angry all along. He understands, finally, that it wasn't the external noises, not the other monks, not the animals, not even the empty boat. It was his reaction to them.
His internal response.
Yes, they were like that empty boat. They only had the power to upset him through his own internal response.
It's such a simple yet incredibly powerful illustration. The people or situations that trigger us are so often like that empty boat, aren't they? They're kind of neutral until we project our own interpretations and reactions onto them.
Exactly. They don't inherently make us angry or upset. Our own thinking, our interpretations, that internal second arrow is what creates the suffering.
This brings us neatly to the role of the mind itself. Our source material talks about how the mind evolved. What's its primary job, according to the book?
Well, the book explains that the human mind developed this incredible capacity for thought, reasoning, analysis, primarily for one fundamental reason.
Survival.
Survival. Okay, its core function, really, from an evolutionary standpoint, is just to keep us alive.
So it's constantly on the lookout for danger, like a built-in alarm system.
Precisely. It's designed to alert us to potential threats in our environment. And it's so effective at this that it doesn't just look for immediate dangers right now. It also draws on past experiences to create hypothetical future threats.
Ah, the what-ifs.
Exactly. It's constantly running these what-if scenarios in the background. Think of how your body automatically tenses up when you hear a sudden loud noise that's a primal survival response kicking in.
Which is fantastic for avoiding, actual dangers, like a predator jumping out, but maybe not so helpful in navigating a stressful workday or a disagreement.
Exactly right. While this hypervigilance was absolutely crucial for survival in a more primitive world, in our modern lives, where genuine life or death situations are, thankfully, relatively rare, hopefully. This constant threat assessment mode can lead to chronic states of anxiety, fear, and a whole host of negative emotions. The mind starts interpreting everyday situations, a deadline, a difficult conversation, traffic as potential threats to our well-being.
So the mind is brilliant at keeping us safe, physically safe, but not necessarily wired for happiness or fulfillment.
That's a crucial distinction the book makes, that the mind's primary focus is survival, not inherent joy or fulfillment. It doesn't really prioritize feeling good.
Right.
And the book suggests that to truly thrive, we need to, in a sense, recalibrate our relationship with our minds. We need to understand its survival-oriented nature so we can move beyond that as our sole operating system.
This sets the stage for a really important distinction in the book. The difference between thoughts and thinking. This isn't just about wordplay, is it? It sounds fundamental.
Oh, not at all. This is absolutely fundamental. It's a turning point in understanding where our suffering actually comes from. The book describes thoughts as the raw mental energy, the basic mental material. They arise spontaneously, effortlessly, often from a source beyond our conscious control. What the book refers to sometimes as the universe or universal mind.
Like clouds floating by.
That's a great analogy. Think of them like nouns, things we have. They just appear.
They just pop into our heads, often out of nowhere. We don't really choose what thought comes next, do we?
Precisely. We can't really dictate the thoughts that arise. Thinking, on the other hand, is the active engagement with those thoughts.
The doing part.
Yes, the doing part. It requires energy, effort, conscious attention. It's the process of dwelling on a thought, analyzing it, judging it, building stories around it. Think of it like a verb, something we actively do.
So if thoughts just happen, like the weather, and thinking is our active involvement with them, our reaction to the weather, then which one is the troublemaker when it comes to causing suffering?
According to the source material, it's the thinking. Thinking is the root cause of psychological suffering. It's not the initial thought itself, but our subsequent involvement with it, the meaning we layer onto it, the scenarios we play out in our heads that leads to negative emotions.
And what about positive thoughts? Where do they fit into this picture? Do we need to actively think positive thoughts to feel good? Because that's often what we're told.
Right. That's a common idea.
Yeah.
But the book makes a really interesting point here, one that might surprise you. It suggests that positive thoughts, the ones that feel good, aren't actually a result of thinking either.
Really?
Yeah. Instead, they arise naturally from our inherent state of peace, love, and joy. They are a natural byproduct of simply being, not actively thinking. Think about a baby,
Yeah.
naturally joyful without any complex internal monologue going on.
So our default setting is actually positive. That feels counterintuitive sometimes, especially when we're feeling really down or anxious.
It absolutely can, especially when we're caught in a cycle of negative thinking.
Yeah.
It feels like that is the default. But the book proposes that beneath all the mental chatter, our fundamental state, our core essence, is one of well-being.
Okay.
Negative emotions arise when we start that active process of thinking about our thoughts, essentially clouding or blocking that natural state of being.
To really bring this home, the book offers a really insightful thought experiment, the dream amount of money exercise. Can you walk us through that? It really clarifies the difference.
Absolutely, it's a great one. The idea is to first just consider what would be your ideal annual income. Let a number come to mind without too much analysis. Just poof, a number.
Right.
Then take that number and multiply it by 5.
Okay. Wow.
Exactly. Now, really tune into your emotional response to this much larger figure. What feelings come up?
Yeah, when I tried this, the initial amount felt kind of exciting. Like, ooh, yeah, that's a genuine possibility. But then when I saw the multiplied number, whoosh, all sorts of doubts and that's impossible. Thoughts immediately flooded in. Like, how could I ever?
That's a very common experience, and it perfectly illustrates the point. The book highlights that the initial thought of your dream income often feels expansive and effortless. It's just a thought arising, maybe even inspiring.
Right.
But the subsequent thinking about that much larger amount, the how would that ever happen? I'm not worthy of that, the what if I mess it up? That's what typically triggers the negative emotions. Doubt, unworthiness, anxiety, limitation.
Right. The original thought was just a neutral idea, maybe even a positive one, of something I desired. The suffering came from my mind getting involved, judging and criticizing that thought, creating a whole story of impossibility around it.
Yeah. Exactly. Perfectly put. And the book concludes from this experiment that it's not necessary to judge our thoughts at all. In fact, doing so is often destructive and unhelpful. The initial spark of what you wanted was maybe the helpful part. All the thinking that followed just created obstacles in your own mind.
So we don't need to constantly police our thoughts and try to force positive thinking. That feels like a huge relief for many of us, I'm sure. That takes a lot of effort.
It does. And the book actually challenges the whole premise of needing constant positive self-talk or affirmations to feel good. It suggests that our natural state, our core being, is already one of joy, love, ecstasy, freedom, gratitude. We don't need to generate positive thoughts to access these feelings. They are our inherent human condition underneath the thinking.
This ties back beautifully to the reflection you asked listeners to do at the beginning about a moment of intense joy or love. The book encourages us to really consider what thoughts were present at the peak of that experience.
Right. And what's often revealed when people really look, during those most profound moments of joy, love, flow, our minds were surprisingly quiet. There wasn't a constant stream of thoughts racing through our heads, analyzing the joy. For those who did have a thought, it was often a simple feeling of gratitude, perhaps. But the book points out that the feeling of joy or love usually came first.
The feeling preceded the thought.
Often, yes. The thought didn't create the emotion. It often followed it like a label or an appreciation of the feeling that was already there.
So we don't need to think our way into feeling good. It's almost the opposite. The thinking often gets in the way of our natural state of well-being.
Precisely. The book suggests that negative emotions arise when we get caught up in that process of thinking about our thoughts, which in turn can block our connection to what it calls infinite intelligence, that fundamental source of well-being, creativity, and wisdom that underlies everything.
Okay, this concept of infinite intelligence sounds a bit abstract, maybe. The book then introduces Sydney Banks's 3 principles of human experience as a framework to help us understand this better, right?
Yes, exactly. These 3 core principles, universal mind, universal consciousness, and universal thought, offer a really powerful lens, a way to grasp how our entire human experience is created from this deeper universal source, rather than just from our personal psychology alone.
Okay, let's break these down a bit. What exactly is universal mind?
Universal mind is described as the fundamental intelligence and life force that animates everything in existence. It's the energy behind a tiny acorn knowing how to grow into a mighty oak tree.
Wow.
The planets orbiting the sun with perfect precision, our own bodies knowing how to heal a cut without us consciously directing the process. It's the inherent wisdom that governs all of life, operating constantly, whether we're aware of it or not.
It's the intelligence in everything.
Exactly. The book connects this to various concepts people use, like God, infinite intelligence, the quantum field, the underlying field of reality, or simply source, that fundamental creative power. Think of it as the energy that makes everything go.
And this universal mind is where our thoughts originate, according to this view.
According to this understanding, yes. Universal mind is the wellspring of all thoughts, as well as everything else we perceive in the universe. It really emphasizes the deep interconnectedness of all things, suggesting that any feeling of separation is ultimately an illusion created by our own thinking.
And when we feel connected to it.
When we are more aligned or connected with this universal mind, we naturally experience feelings of wholeness, love, joy, inspiration. It's like tapping into our natural source of well-being. We feel at home.
Okay, that gives us a sense of the foundation, the energy source. What about universal consciousness?
Universal consciousness is the universal awareness that allows us to know that we exist and to be aware of our thoughts and experiences. Without it, we wouldn't be able to experience anything at all. Our senses would be meaningless data.
So it makes experience possible.
Yes, it's what brings the raw energy and potential of universal mind into our personal awareness, making actual felt experience possible. Think of it as the capacity to perceive, the light of awareness itself.
Okay, so it's like the medium through which we experience life, the awareness itself.
That's a great way to put it. It's the very fabric of awareness.
And finally, universal thought. This sounds like where it gets personal.
Universal thought is the raw, creative potential of the universe made manifest. It's the fundamental energy and form that universal mind uses to create everything, including our own individual thoughts. It's our innate ability to take the formless energy of universal mind and, through the lens of consciousness, shape our individual moment-to-moment experience of reality.
So it's the building blocks of our personal experience derived from that universal source.
Exactly. It's how the formless takes form in our minds.
The book uses a helpful analogy here with a DVD, TV, and electricity, right? To make this less abstract.
Yes, it's a good one. Universal thought is like the DVD, contains all the possible content, all the information, all potential forms.
Okay.
Universal consciousness is like the TV and the DVD player. The mechanism that takes that information from the thought DVD and makes it perceivable, brings it to life for us to experience.
Right.
And universal mind is like the electricity powering the whole system, the underlying energy that makes everything function and connects it all together. Without the electricity, nothing works.
That really helps visualize it. Okay, so if thinking our active engagement with thought is at the root of our suffering, the big natural question is, how do we actually stop thinking? Or at least think less destructively. The book shares another really powerful Zen parable here about heaven and hell that speaks to this, doesn't it?
It does, and it's incredibly direct. A fierce, imposing samurai approaches a Zen master who is quietly meditating. He rudely demands to know about heaven and hell.
Not exactly starting from a place of inner peace himself, probably deep in thought.
Indeed, very much caught in his own thinking and ego. The samurai becomes enraged by the master's seemingly dismissive silence and calm demeanor. He draws his sword, ready to strike off the master's head right there.
Intense.
Very. And in that precise moment of imminent violence, the Zen master looks calmly, directly at the samurai and says simply, "That's hell."
Wow. Yeah. Just wow. In the white-hot intensity of his own anger and aggression, that was hell.
Exactly. The samurai instantly recognizes the profound truth in the master's words. His rage, his desire for violence, his internal state that had created his own internal hell right there in that moment.
Yeah.
A state of intense suffering fueled entirely by his own thoughts and emotions. He experiences the full weight of his inner turmoil in that single instant.
And the impact is immediate and profound, I imagine.
Completely. The samurai is totally taken aback by the master's simple, yet devastatingly accurate statement. His anger just dissolves. His eyes fill with tears of understanding. He drops his sword and bows deeply in gratitude for the insight. He saw it.
So, the parable beautifully illustrates that it's our state of mind, our thinking and feeling in the moment, that creates our experience of heaven or hell, regardless of our external circumstances. But practically speaking, how do we move towards that state of less thinking, less being caught in that hell?
Well, the book suggests that true and lasting peace doesn't come from trying to forcibly stop thoughts, because they arise naturally. Instead, it comes from recognizing that we always have access to a state of pure peace, love, and fulfillment that lies beneath any temporary thinking we might be experiencing.
It's always there.
It's always there, like the clear sky behind the clouds. We can't always control when thoughts pop up, but we can definitely learn to minimize the time we spend caught up in thinking, believing the thoughts are reality.
So how do we do that?
The crucial first step is simply to recognize that negative emotions, anxiety, anger, sadness, serve as a signal. They're like an internal alarm bell, indicating that we've become entangled in our thoughts, that we're believing something that isn't ultimately true about ourselves or the world.
Just notice.
Just noticing. Simply becoming aware, I'm caught in thinking right now, and that's why I feel bad, can begin to lessen the power of those emotions and allow us to gently return our attention to the present moment, to our natural state of underlying well-being.
It's like remembering that the sun is always shining, even when clouds pass overhead. The darkness of negative thinking is temporary, not the fundamental reality.
That's a beautiful and very apt analogy used in the book. We might temporarily forget our inherent state of well-being when we're lost in thought, completely identified with the clouds. But just like the sun behind the clouds, it's always there. Recognizing that we're currently in the clouds of thinking allows us to experience the difficult emotions without the added fear that the sun of our natural peace is gone forever or won't emerge again.
Okay, this raises a really important question that I think a lot of listeners might have right now. If we're not actively thinking and planning and analyzing all the time, how can we possibly thrive in the world? Won't we just become passive and unproductive? Like, don't we need thinking to get things done?
That's a very common and completely valid concern. It seems logical, right? And the book addresses it directly by pointing out something fascinating. Our most exceptional performances, those moments of true flow, peak experience, deep engagement, they're often characterized by complete absence of conscious analytical thought.
Like being in the zone.
Exactly. Think about times when you've been completely absorbed in a task.
Okay.
You enjoy playing music, writing, coding, playing a sport, even just having a great conversation. You lose all track of time. Were you consciously thinking and analyzing every single step? Okay, now I move my finger here, now I say this.
Usually not. It feels more intuitive, fluid, almost like I'm on autopilot, but in a really good, efficient, creative way, not robotic.
Exactly. The book uses the classic example of athletes being in the zone, where their movements are fluid, instinctive, perfectly timed, not dictated by conscious analysis or worry about the outcome. It also introduces the Japanese concept of mushin. Mind without mind or no mind. It describes a mind that is free of random thoughts, anger, fear, ego, allowing for spontaneous and effective action without hesitation or internal conflict.
So it's not about becoming apathetic or disengaged at all. It's actually about operating from a deeper, more intuitive, and less restrictive level of awareness.
Precisely. Hesitation, self-doubt, fear, procrastination, these are all products of overthinking and analysis. When we can access a state of non-thinking or less thinking, we are freed from those limitations and can often embody our full potential, creating and acting more effectively, more freely, and experiencing a greater sense of flow and even accomplishment.
Okay, but what about our goals, our dreams, our ambitions? If we stop actively thinking about them and strategizing all the time, do we just let go of all of that? Does ambition disappear?
Another great question, and the book tackles this one head-on too, acknowledging that this was a significant concern for the author himself initially. The key insight here, according to the source, is the distinction between goals that are born out of desperation and goals that arise from a place of genuine inspiration.
Okay, desperation versus inspiration. What's the difference in how those feel? How do you tell them apart?
Goals driven by desperation often stem from a feeling of lack, scarcity, urgency, maybe even fear. There's a sense of heaviness around them. They feel like a constant struggle, often fueled by an underlying belief like, I'm not enough, or I need to achieve this specific thing to finally be happy or worthy.
Right, that chasing feeling.
Exactly. Goals that arise from inspiration, on the other hand, feel much lighter, more natural. They often come with a sense of joy, curiosity, excitement, even ease. They come from a place of inner knowing, genuine desire, passion, not from trying to escape negative feelings or prove something to yourself or others.
It's the difference between trying to force something heavy uphill versus allowing a natural flow, like a river finding its course to the sea.
That's a wonderful way to put it. The book suggests that our inherent drive and inner wisdom regarding our true desires, our authentic path, are always present within us, like that naturally flowing river. Our constant thinking, worrying, analyzing, second-guessing that often acts like a dam, obstructing that natural flow and making it harder to see and move towards what we truly deeply want from that inspired place.
The book even offers a specific question to help us tap into these inspiration-driven goals, right? To bypass the dam of thinking.
Yes, it's a powerful one. It encourages us to ask ourselves something like this. If I had unlimited resources, totally infinite money, if I'd already traveled the world, done everything I thought I should do, if I had absolutely no fear of failure or judgment, and if I wouldn't receive any external recognition or reward for what I do, what would I choose to do or create just for the love of it?
Wow, that strips away a lot of the usual motivations.
It does. The idea is that by removing those external pressures and self-imposed limitations created by our thinking mind, the need for approval, the fear of lack, etc., the answers that arise more spontaneously, the things that just light you up without a reason, those are more likely to be aligned with our deepest inspiration and natural direction.
This naturally leads into the beautiful concept of unconditional love and unconditional creation that's explored in the book. Can you explain what those mean in this context? It sounds related to that inspired state.
Definitely. The author shares a personal and very relatable story about his experience with his girlfriend McKenna's unconditional love, her genuine affection that wasn't based on him having to be a certain way or do certain things for her to love him.
Just love for who he was.
Exactly. And this contrasted sharply with his own realization looking back that his love had often become conditional based on external factors, performance, expectations being met. This led him to understand that true, unconditional love isn't something you get based on conditions. It's an outpouring from within. It's a natural state of connection and affection that isn't dependent on external circumstances or even reciprocation. It just flows out.
Like the sun shining.
Like the sun shining.
Yeah.
And how does this idea connect with creation?
Yeah, how does that translate to creating things?
Well, unconditional creation is the act of creating purely for the joy of creation itself, without any strings attached, without external motivations like needing to make money, gain fame, prove our worth, or get a specific outcome.
Just creating for creation's sake.
Exactly. When we create from this place of unconditional love, this inner abundance, this inspiration we were just talking about, we immediately experience positive feelings flow, engagement, joy. There's often a deep sense of connection to something larger than ourselves, to that universal intelligence, perhaps. The book suggests that this state of unconditional creation can only truly be accessed when our minds are quieter, when we're operating more from that state of non-thinking, just allowing the inspiration to flow through us.
It's like the pure joy an artist feels in the act of painting, or a musician lost in playing, regardless of whether anyone ever sees or hears or appreciates the final artwork. The process itself is the reward and the connection.
Precisely. It's about the inherent satisfaction and fulfillment found in the act of expressing that inner creativity, which feels like a direct reflection of our connection to that universal source, that wellspring of inspiration.
Now, after someone starts to experience this deeper peace through moments of non-thinking, maybe they feel less stressed, more present, the book acknowledges that there might be a sense of, well, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
What guidance does it offer for navigating that potentially unfamiliar space?
Yeah, it's a really natural feeling, almost paradoxical. When we're so used to the constant hum, the constant doing of mental activity, a state of profound peace can feel, well, unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Maybe even boring at first, or slightly unnerving.
Like something's missing.
Exactly. And the ego, which kind of thrives on that mental chatter and the feeling of being in control, might try to reassert itself. It might inject worries, anxieties, or doubts like, are you sure you're doing this right? Shouldn't you be figuring things out? What if you miss something important?
The mind trying to get its old job back.
Pretty much. The book reassures us that this is a totally normal reaction. The key is to remember, again, that it's the thinking itself that creates those negative feelings of worry or doubt. The solution is to gently return to that state of non-thinking, of simply being present without judging the mind for trying to pull you back in.
And to channel that newfound mental energy, the energy that's no longer being consumed by constant thinking and worrying, into those inspired goals we talked about earlier.
Exactly. That's the practical application. By focusing our attention and energy on activities and goals that genuinely inspire us, that feel light and joyful, we can direct that freed up mental bandwidth in a positive and fulfilling way. This prevents it from just circling back to fuel more unnecessary mental chatter and worry.
Makes sense.
The book even suggests incorporating something like a simple morning activation ritual. Could be meditation, journaling, appreciating nature, anything that feels good, to intentionally set a positive, non-thinking direction for the day and build momentum in that peaceful, inspired state.
The book uses a really insightful analogy about the 88 keys on a piano to illustrate the idea that nothing is inherently good or bad. Can you explain that one? It helps with judging less.
Yeah, it's a great visual. Imagine the 88 keys on a piano. Each key simply produces a different note, a different sound frequency. None of the keys are inherently wrong or bad. You wouldn't say the C-sharp key is evil.
Oh, right. It's just a note.
It's just a note. Similarly, the book suggests in life there are no inherently good or bad events, choices, or experiences in and of themselves. It's our thinking about those things, the meaning, the judgment, the story we attach to them, that assigns those labels, good, bad, right, wrong, and creates our emotional response. It creates the music we experience from hitting those keys.
So our feelings tell us about our thinking, not about the event itself.
That's the core idea. Our natural state is one of well-being. Negative emotions, therefore, are simply indicators. They're like dashboard lights telling us that we're misunderstanding something, that we're buying into our own thought-created stories about reality, that we're momentarily disconnected from that natural state.
And the solution isn't to try and eliminate the wrong keys, like trying to never have negative thoughts again.
Exactly. That's impossible and exhausting. The solution is to remember that our thinking is creating the sound, the feeling. It's to become aware of the thinking without resistance, maybe even welcome it with a bit of understanding. There's that worry thought again. And allow those thoughts and the feelings they generate to naturally dissipate as we stop feeding them with more thinking.
Okay, so how do we navigate life and make decisions if we're not constantly overthinking things and weighing every single pro and con? The book really emphasizes the crucial role of intuition here, doesn't it? It even quotes Einstein on the value of intuition over the rational mind.
It does. Einstein apparently said the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant, but we've created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Wow. The book suggests that while there may not be inherently right or wrong decisions in an absolute cosmic sense, like the piano keys, some choices will naturally lead to more harmonious and pleasant outcomes, depending on the context, like choosing notes that create a chord that sounds pleasing versus a dissonant clash.
So how do we choose the pleasant chord without overanalyzing?
It encourages us to rely more on non-thinking and our innate intuition, that gut feeling, that inner knowing, rather than getting bogged down in endless rational analysis and weighing pros and cons until we're paralyzed. The book suggests we often already possess a deeper knowing about what to do, what feels right for us, but fear or self-doubt fueled by overthinking tends to cloud that inner wisdom.
It's about learning to trust that quieter inner voice, the sacred gift.
Precisely. The book proposes that when we quiet our mental noise, when we let go of trying to figure everything out with our limited intellect, we open ourselves up to access a much deeper well of knowledge, wisdom, and guidance through that connection to universal or infinite intelligence. We tap into something bigger than just our personal brain.
So how do we actually cultivate and follow our intuition? It can sometimes feel a bit nebulous, you know? How do you know it's intuition and not just another thought?
That's a great question. Following our intuition is described in the book as being tapped into something far greater than our individual limited self. It's operating from that state of non-thinking, of flow, having a more direct connection to that universal intelligence or divine guidance.
Okay.
In this state, we often experience a clear knowing of what to do or what the next step is, without conscious deliberation or logical reasoning. It's a guidance that feels natural, effortless, sometimes even obvious, even if we can't explain why it feels right.
And the book mentions miracles happening in this state.
Yes, it suggests that what we often perceive as miracles, unexpected opportunities showing up, the right person calling, helpful resources appearing seemingly out of nowhere, can often manifest more easily when we're operating from this intuitive space, aligned with that larger flow, rather than trying to force everything through sheer willpower and mental effort.
It's about trusting that inner nudge, that feeling, even when it doesn't seem entirely logical on the surface.
Exactly. That intuitive guidance often comes in the form of subtle thoughts, feelings, images, or urges. But these are described as having a different quality than our usual strenuous, repetitive, often negative thinking. They tend to carry a sense of quiet confidence, of knowingness, of inherent truth, even if they're gentle.
They feel different.
They feel different, less effortful, less noisy. The book encourages us to practice acting on these intuitive nudges, even when the full path ahead isn't crystal clear, trusting that the way will be revealed as we take those first steps. This definitely requires a degree of faith in the unknown, a willingness to step out without all the answers figured out in advance by the thinking mind.
The book concludes with a really beautiful idea about creating space for miracles. And it shares that well-known story about a Zen master and a scholar to illustrate this. How does that story tie everything together?
Ah, yes, the overflowing teacup story. It's perfect here. A scholar comes to visit a Zen master, eager to learn about Zen. But the scholar is already brimming with his own fixed ideas, theories, and speculations, and he constantly interrupts the master to showcase his own knowledge.
Not really open to learning them.
Not really. So the master, instead of directly lecturing him or arguing, calmly begins to pour tea into the scholar's cup. He keeps pouring even after the cup is completely full, and the tea starts overflowing onto the table.
Okay.
The scholar, startled, exclaims, "Stop! The cup is full. No more can be poured in."
Naturally.
And the master replies gently, "Just like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you wisdom unless you first empty your cup?"
Powerful.
It beautifully illustrates that to create space for miracles, for new understanding, for intuition, for genuine insight to arise, we need to quiet our own mental chatter. We need to be willing to empty our cup of preconceived notions and be open and receptive to something new, something perhaps simpler than our complex thoughts suggest.
It's about recognizing the simplicity of the core truth we've been discussing, that direct link between our thinking and our suffering, and continually, gently returning to that awareness whenever we find ourselves getting caught up again in the complexities and stories of our minds.
Precisely. And the book gently reminds us that as we begin to experience more consistent peace through this understanding, the sheer unfamiliarity of it might ironically trigger the thought that something is wrong, or that we're missing something.
Because peace feels weird compared to constant worry.
It can. Our minds, being creatures of habit, might try to re-engage in familiar patterns of worry or analysis, seeking a false sense of safety in the known, even if the known is uncomfortable. The key is to recognize this tendency, to have faith in the inherent well-being that underlies everything, and to understand that true fulfillment, creativity, and even abundance often flow more easily from that state of inner peace and joy, not from struggle.
And falling back into old thinking patterns is normal, not a failure.
Absolutely normal. The important thing isn't to never think negatively again, but to notice when we are caught in it, without judgment, and gently guide ourselves back to that place of awareness, back to the present moment, back to our underlying peace. It's a continuous practice of remembering.
This has been such a profound journey into the nature of our own minds. It really makes you reconsider so much of what we take for granted about our thoughts and feelings. It's quite paradigm shifting.
It truly is. And the book leaves us with a very empowering and hopeful perspective, I think. It's not about fixing ourselves, but understanding ourselves differently.
So what's the key takeaway, that one final thought you'd like to leave our listeners with as we wrap up this deep dive?
I think the core message is simple, but incredibly profound. You are only ever one thought away from peace, love, and joy, and those states naturally arise from a place of non-thinking. If you've approached this deep dive with an open mind, even just considering these ideas, you've likely already gained valuable insights that have the potential to shift your perspective in significant ways.
Just hearing it can change things.
Exactly. Remember that once your awareness expands, it doesn't really shrink back down permanently.
Yeah.
Even when we temporarily forget these truths, get caught up in thinking again, which we all do, the ability to remember and return to our natural state of well-being is always within us.
Don't be discouraged if it seems too simple.
Right. Often the most profound truths are simple. Complexity is often the mind's way of avoiding the simple truth. Listen to your inner wisdom. Remember that everything you truly need, peace, love, wisdom, creativity, is already present within you, beneath the noise of thought.
And by living more from that place of inner peace, our own transformation will naturally inspire those around us without even trying.
That's often how it works, yes. Your state of being communicates more than words.
And for those who want to explore these ideas further, maybe get some practical exercises, the book offers some great resources and guides, which you mentioned can be found at josephnguen.org/resources.
Yes, those can be very helpful for anyone wanting to continue their exploration and really put these principles into practice in their daily life.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating deep dive. It's given me so much to think about, or perhaps not think about.
My pleasure entirely. It's been a truly insightful discussion. Always good to explore these fundamental ideas.
And to you, our wonderful listener, thank you for joining us on this exploration. Now that you have a deeper understanding of the powerful impact of your own thinking, here's a final thought to ponder. What is one second arrow, one layer of thought-created suffering that you might choose to consciously release today, even just for a moment? Take a moment to consider that, and perhaps you'll discover a little more peace in the space that opens up. Until our next deep dive, take care.
Step into your greatness, let it shine oh so bright. I am worthy VIP, gonna take you to new heights. Turn the volume up, let's ignite your soul's delight. Join the journey now, everything gonna be alright. Hey, hey, you know you're worthy all day. Stand tall, feel the love come your way. VIP every single day. Let's celebrate, it's your time to sway. Unlock your power, let your spirit take flight. I am worthy VIP, beaming light into the night. Feel the magic spark, it's a beautiful sight. Here to cheer you on, life shining a new light.